you said earlier that you had some. I'd like to just try and track a little bit here.
Sure.
You have some herbal women in your family,
Mhm.
and I believe this is something that has passed on as well to you. You work as a horticulturist. You're working with plants. That's like your main work. And you mentioned the Ogham here, and I wonder if we could just like open that door and see see what's behind it, your relationship to the plants and the knowledge there, and how that connected to you learning about the Ogham. And I guess like realizing that this ancient alphabet existed with this plant knowledge. What was that like for you when you discovered it?
And I'd be happy to talk about that. It's actually where I started my formal writing in this field, because I'd started an essay series as a lesson for myself. There were a number of books I'd read, some of which were good, some of which I essentially put down halfway through and said, this is New Age nonsense.
Yeah.
This is not worth reading.
There's a lot of that in the Ogham, unfortunately. Like,
There,
and as an Irish person and an Irish researcher, isn't there a tendency, or like it's tempting to want to say that this is like true or it's accurate, that there's these like tree zodiacs, but
yes, the
it's
tree zodiacs.
but to stay true to the authenticity and you know the facts, you just have to throw that stuff away.
Exactly. And that was why I decided to set myself a challenge, which was to go through the Ogham and write an essay of my own based in solid research for each plant and try to connect this very dry academic material from Kuno Meyer's translations mainly, and one or two other researchers, to what I knew of the plant world. Why did our ancestors make the alder the tree of the warrior, and specifically the tree of the defender? And as I started thinking about it and researching, each tree had what I think of as a light bulb moment, a wonderful moment of connection where you would understand what our ancestors were trying to say and why. Because they were not academics, and they were not, let me say this bluntly, they were not writing something to sell to someone else. They
Good
were,
point. Very good point. Yeah.
yeah, this was information that they were living by. So the Ogham, for those who are new to it, it's a writing system based on a line drawn from the bottom to the top, and you read it from the bottom up, and it's cross hatches across a line, and each set of hatch marks is a letter. So with that in mind, children were taught, you climb the Ogham as you climb a tree. And they were taught the way we teach our children. A is for apple, B is for ball. They were taught BF is for birch, and so on. So they remembered everything contextually as, okay, we're climbing a tree. What kind of tree are we climbing? It's this tree. And each letter had cultural connotations. So going back to the alder, why is it the tree of the defender? Because when you cut alder wood, at first, it is bright white. But a moment after you cut it, just as if you'd cut your own hand, it turns red. And essentially, it became the tree that symbolized, I'm not looking for a fight, but if you start a fight with me, I will defend. And it became a charm to carry, or make your shield out of alder wood in the days of the High Kings, especially in the 9th century and before. Alderwood was often incorporated in shields because it was a symbol of that deep protection. And it was a charm against losing your own blood because the tree had already given its blood. So these were very basic understandings, but they were also very ecologically intelligent understandings. So why is oak the tree of the chieftain and the tree of permanence? Because oak produces so much tannic acid, and the cells of the oak wood are so tiny that almost no bacteria can get in there, and the wood lasts forever. And we
So,
still have, yeah,
yes, so go on. And I'm fascinated. This is fascinating. I
yeah,
could listen to you speak
yeah.
about this all day. So you're saying that it was giving this kind of like noble position among the trees, and that's what they were called, the nobles of the wood. The oak
Mhm.
was because of its durability, because of its actual the physical properties of the tree
Yep.
itself.
The physical properties of the tree itself, our ancestors were keen-eyed about their environment, and they realized that oak had certain properties, one of which is it lives pretty much forever unless you cut it, and then its wood lasts. This is somewhat, I want to give the caveat that this is somewhat subjective. I mean, our ancestors usually lived 280 if they were lucky, 260 normally. So a plant creating wood that lasted
Mhm.
for 200 years, that's forever. But that said, we still have oak pieces that have lasted 9 centuries, which is close enough to forever. But yeah, each of these trees, our ancestors understood as personalities, not human personalities, but as individual beings that had qualities that were worthy of notice and remembrance. For example, ivy, gort, is the tree of growth.
Mhm.
And what's wonderful is that in the Ogham, it's growth for good or growth for evil, because ivy is beautiful, it grows wonderfully, but if it gets a hold of another tree, it'll scramble up it and kill it.
Yeah.
So they used it as the symbol of good growth, but also as the symbol of don't get too big for your britches, don't overreach your grasp. And so occasionally there are historical records of chieftain chalking gort on someone's horse or someone's wheels as a reminder, hey, you're getting overly
Wow.
ambitious, be polite. It was a warning that if you grow too fast, you will be cut back. Because one of the things that turns up about the ivy in the Brehon
Mhm.
Laws is that it is a shrub of the wood, and it is specifically recommended cut the ivy, feed it to the
Mhm.
kine. And
Mhm.
it was good fodder for cattle in winter. I want to give the caveat, it's not the best fodder. I wouldn't feed it to cows in the modern world, but if it's
Yeah.
choice between no food and ivy, feed
Because
the
the
to
ivy, if left untamed, it can be very destructive. So it's unusual. I mean, it bears pointing out that it would be unusual in the early law to say cut a plant, because most of the
yes.
time it's like don't cut the plant, or if you cut it, only take what you need and use all you take. And if you were to cut the limb of the tree, you had to cover it with some soil so it would be
Mhm.
healed and things like that. So when there's a word of wisdom to say, hey, with the ivy, maybe you should keep an eye on that. And then you have that organic material. They used everything. So whereas we might throw it into a composter or set it on fire today,
Mhm.
they would put it to use.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just
And
kind of built into the culture.
exactly. And there were trees that were specifically, our ancestors figured out they do better when they're cut back. Willow is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the fact that this basic, not basic, this sophisticated understanding that started at a basic level of looking around the forest and saying, what does what? And it wasn't intentional, it was a product of living in the world and living with the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could learn a lot from that to stop fighting the world and work with it. I
Mm-hmm.
now live in Colorado, which is a very arid, very dry part of the United States. And I teach this, I own a landscaping business, and I now teach this to my customers. Don't plant things that are going to need constant care. Plant something that is adapted to this area,
Yeah.
and then you won't have to fight the land and worry about whether we're getting water this year, because this land was never meant to support what you're trying to grow. Well, the same thing happened when the English got to Ireland. They wanted to plant rolling swaths of wheat
Mm-hmm.
across the rolling downs. Well, the downs are boggy with water and wheat likes drier soil. So they were wasting their energy, and they had made very unpleasant comments about Irish growing barley all the time. The thing is, barley doesn't mind the rain.
Yeah. I wonder, one of the trees that I'm interested in the Ogham, and I'd like to hear your knowledge on this, is the Yew Tree.
Yes.
My understanding of it is that it's a significant one because, well, we find it growing in graves today. So I believe there's some connection with that, like, what do they call it? Axis Monday, like between the two worlds, and something about, and correct me if I'm wrong, about the bark of it being poisonous, so it can't be eaten except by deers or something. So a deer can eat the bark, and that's why they were considered sacred. Now I could be wrong on that, so I'm prepared to be corrected. But just, I'm interested to know your knowledge about the yew tree.
Of course. So the yew tree is the tree of death and rebirth, partly because of its growth habit. When the tree is getting sick, it will actually put a branch down into its own rotten trunk and sprout a new tree from its own trunk, or down into the soil around its own roots, and use itself as compost to grow a new tree. So essentially, it propagates itself clonally. But specifically what you were talking about, deer shouldn't eat you. Nothing should eat you, but they will eat it. So our ancestors thought that they could.
Okay.
Kind of live on it, they'll die too. But it has a lot of taxum in it, which is now used to kill cancer cells. And yeah, it's a wonderful chemical when used properly, but as you can imagine, if it kills cells, it's a poison quite quickly. And one of the uses for yew tisane, so a tea made from the yew branches, was as a bug repellent, because you would sprinkle this around, say, costly cloth, so that insects who got a mouthful, well, they died, so they didn't eat all of your cloth. And you would put yew branches around items that you wanted to be protected from time. And partly that was symbolic, and partly it was chemical. Nothing's going to touch yew because of the taxon, or the taxon in it.
It's actually mind-blowing, and I'm kind of a little bit envious of you and your journey, as you have gone like deep into all of these plants, and you said you had like the light bulb moment for all of them. And I wish we had enough time to actually go through every single plant and learn all the lessons of it. But I guess like people will have to buy your book if they want to learn more about the insights from the Ogham alphabet and the triads. You're an admin on the Brehon Academy page, so I feel so privileged that you post your work there, and people kind of get like exclusives to see this brand new beautiful artwork that you do. But if I want to get a copy of the books that you have, or I know you have an oracle set as well, where's the best place where I can find more about your work?
Well, my work is sold through the Brehon Law Academy page, and then head over to Amazon and just type in my name, Olivia Wylie, Wylie. And beyond that, I'm also on Etsy under LeafingOutArt, and all of my works are also art prints over there. So if you want to be able to look up and be reminded to keep studying, get a picture of Hazel from the Ogham.
Yeah, I've seen your Etsy store as well. Like it's really beautiful, because you have, obviously you can buy the books, but you can get like a mug with your favorite Ogham print on it, or pillowcases and things like that. So it's a really like interesting, creative way to show the Irish culture. They're great gift ideas as well. And I said this last time when we spoke, but I'm going to say it again. I think that what you have done is given real gift to Irish people. You, through your art and through your books and through your passion for Ireland, you have created these vessels that are really enjoyable and really accessible and beautiful to look at. So I want to thank you for all the work that you have done over the years, and I look forward to the work that we continue to do together into the future.
As do I. It's been wonderful working with you, and just keep working on pieces that open the door to all these wonderful stories for folks. Because once the door is open, you realize how many beautiful things are in the Irish culture.
And just as maybe I'm curious to know what you think around why is this important today? Why should we talk about these things that are from 1,000 years ago, or are just like vestiges of, you know, old scraps of manuscripts? Why do you do this? Why is it important?
It's important to me for three reasons. One, it honors my family. It honors my past. And for those of us who are lonely and feel like exiles, this both teaches us why we have that deep loneliness in us, because we were exiled, and reconnects us. It starts to heal that wound in a very small way. The second is that these pieces, written as humans, were coming together in a new way at a new time. They get down to the blood and the bone of what it is to be a human being among other humans. So they strip away all of the politics and all of the fancy words that we put on things in the modern world. And it's as simple as, if you treat your people like this as a leader, you will fall, or your people will fall. Or it's as simple as, what is most beautiful in the world? The song of the linnet. It reconnects us with what's real in the world. And especially in a world that is so diffuse and digital, it's important to reconnect with what is real and what is most base is the wrong word, most integral to our humanity. And that is the way we interact with one another and the way we treat one another. And the third reason is simply that if the stories are not told, they are forgotten. So each generation has to find a way to tell stories, or they will be lost. And like I said, the other part of my family is Menominee. That's the tribe of Wisconsin. I come of two peoples who have suffered, but I am watching one lose its memory and lose its stories. And I'm watching the other, the Irish, remember their stories and reconnect. And so I hope to be a small part of that memory and that remembering, because I know what happens, and I've seen it. When nobody does this work, then nobody remembers. And that is a tragedy, because there's so much wisdom here that we need now.
And I think that is a perfect way to end this conversation. So, Olivia, thank you again so much for your time.
Always.